All right, if you look up on the screen here, Brady just brought up a very good point, and that is if you double click on your modify request button, all you have to do is just to redirect them back to the first page, because that's already got their information in it. So if you double click on your modify request button, you bring up the BTN modify click routine, all you have to do is redirect them back to the request page. So the code is with the one line that you see there in blue. Now the next exercise only has 8 steps in it, but first I'm going to save this and run it just to verify that indeed everything that's supposed to be working, at least ideally, is working. So I'm going to get back to my request. Let's put a different date. Let's see, let's put in 9/25. We didn't do one queen, I don't think. How about extra pillows and blankets? I purposely spelled blankets wrong. All right, so I can go back and modify that later. I can modify anything I want to later, but you know. And I'm going to say for now I chose phone. All right, submit. There's my stuff. Oh, I spelled blankets wrong. Now I go to modify request. Brings me right back to where I just was. I can change it to blankets. I've also decided I want an email instead. So I make my 2 changes. I go back and submit. Blankets is now spelled correctly. And it's not telling me how I guess, oh, there, preferred method email. Okay? I think at least that's pretty cool stuff. That's about as complex as we've come so far without doing any kind of work with databases at all. All right. So let's quickly just look over the next exercise we're going to do, which is 8.2. In this exercise, you'll store the data that's entered into the request page of the reservation application so it can be displayed on the confirmation like the one that follows. To make it easier, you'll start from, no, that's this one. There we go. In this exercise, you'll use cookies to store the first name and the email address that the user enters into the request form. Then you'll display them in the controls on the request form the next time the user starts the application, as shown here. See that? So we're going to use cookies for both the first name and the email address, so they've got to start. We could literally, when you think about it, we could create cookies for virtually everything. Now, these two don't make sense, but if we knew that it's somebody who's going to have a standing type of reservation, we could make a cookie for this, for this, for this, here, 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 and here. We could do that. We're not asked to do that in here, but we could. All right. And again, you say, well, who cares? Why? The easier you make it for somebody to use your website, the better the chance they're going to use it, right? And you want to make it hard for them to screw up. So it says if it's not already open, open the file. Well, we've got it open. So let's look at what we have to do. The good news is we can see all of it right here. First, add code to the click handler, event handler of the confirm request button on the confirmation form that creates 2 persistent cookies. Again, persistent meaning they last after we are done with the current session, okay? And they will be for the user's first name and their email address, and we'll add them to the HTTP response object. We'll set the expiration date for 6 months. We don't even have to do that, but that's what they ask us to do. Question?
Do you want us to make a separate copy?
No, you don't have to. No, we'll just add it to this stuff. That's fine. That's what they tell us to do, and that's what I did.
Okay.
So, number 3, add code to the load event handler that retrieves the 2 cookies and displays them. This is going to look just like it did before, except after you filled it in once, for mine, it'll come back with Jeff, and it'll have jpscott@rankin.edu. Other than that, it's going to look just the same as it did previously. All right. So add code to the load event handler of the request form that retrieves the 2 cookies and displays their values on the form. The code should be executed only if the page is not being posted back, a reservation object is not found in session state, and the cookies exist. In other words, this is a key thing right here. If there was an object already, we're trying to modify. Does that make sense? And if we click modify, we don't want everything removed except for our first name and our email address. So we have to check for that too. And we have to make sure that cookies do indeed exist. All right, then run the app, complete the request form, submit it, then close the browser window, open it up again, and then the first name and email should be in there. All that makes sense? Then when we get done, add code to the click event handler of the clear button that removes the 2 persistent cookies, run the app again, click on clear, then run it again, and this time they should be blank. Okay? All right, so let's just take it from the top. Add code to the click event handler of the confirm request button. Okay, so I'm going to do that first. All right, so we've already done this. First, let's start. We're going to come in here. Remember what we have to do. We need the current date, and we need the current year. All right? That's how we're starting. So I think I'm going to do this, make these global. So private string current date equals date time dot today dot to short date string. Now, you might look at this and go, I don't understand, why did we even do these? Remember that we want that cookie to last for 6 months, correct? So we have to know how to go 6 months from the current date. All right? And the other thing that we've got now, would you agree, we now have the year dot to string right there. So we can change this from date time to just current year. Okay, that's the first change we made. In fact, what I'm going to do, you don't have to do this, but what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to get it back to where it was. And I'm going to take what we had in there and comment it out and change it. All right, so now I've got them both in there. So I can look at it and just see exactly what it is I've changed. Now, if you look up on the screen here for a minute, please, previously, we just called display reservation. All right? But we only want to display the reservation data if there is reservation data. All right? So we're going to make some changes in here. So I'm going to say in here, I'll just put a comment in, display saved reservation data if any exists. Well, it's not bad. It's the first time my machine started to go nuts today. Oops. Oh, it's okay. If it's not, all right, if it's not null, we want to do this, correct? Because we've got data to display. But if we hit an else on here, I don't know why now it's starting to go. My machine's going nuts again here. All right. So if that's the case, the first thing we want to do is set our I'm going to set my defaults. We had two defaults, and I'm not talking about the name in the email. What are the two defaults? Anybody remember? The arrival date. We want to set the arrival date to the current date. What doesn't it like here? Arrival date. Maybe that looks better. TXT arrival date. Pardon me?
It's a label, not a text box.
Ah, ALBL. Thank you. All right. The other thing is it's always great when you type in something in the morning and it works, and then you do it again in the afternoon and it doesn't work.
How's it gonna find the radio?
This is on confirmed date.
It's
Right, so wouldn't we
display
do
reservation. All right. Otherwise, no.
It's on the confirmed
Yeah, I know. I understand that. I didn't have to do anything to make it work.
just mute that part?
I mean, we could give it the name of the page, I think, but we shouldn't have to do that. Why did that work? And I did have TXT. I've got it on my code. I don't know why, but I do. Let's look once on the request, ASPX. That's the arrival date right there. And in source mode, see?
We were in the CS file for the confirmed page. That's the ASPX file.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is that is the page that I'm trying to reference. All right, I'm trying to reference that value. And I'm trying to reference that value. Where am I? That might be what it is. So maybe what you were saying, yeah. You know all this stuff we just put in here? This should go in request. I'm sorry. So how do we fix this? That's the page I meant. Okay. Hold on. Let's see. We're going to fix it. We're going to fix it right now. All right. We're going to do it ass backwards, but it's still fine. Instead of me printing out the confirm page and the request page, I printed out the request page twice. And I thought that was the confirm page. It was not. All right. So, let's take what we have here, and even though we'll have to do some retyping, let's just get rid of everything that we put in up till this point. All right, so now we got partial class confirm, and there's nothing in there, and we want to remove these these variables, which is going to bring us up to page load, and we're just going to have page load be empty. Okay? This is what I had in there before, that label year.text equals that. And then we were immediately calling display reservation. I apologize. So just get that back so it looks like this again. The good news is the display reservation doesn't change. There's no change. So. Right? So that's back looking, hopefully at least yours too, the way that it was to begin with. The display reservation does not change. It's everything is cool the way it is. Yes, you can remove those globals. Yes, because they will go in the other file. So this is everything through the page load right there. In other words, it doesn't change from the way it was originally. Okay? Where we will have to make changes now is we have to type in about 6 or 7 lines into the confirm. Okay? So right now we've got this in the confirm, and that's cool. But for the confirm, what we have to do is we have to create our cookies here. So this, what we have here, this stays, but it goes on the bottom. I'm gonna run out of room, so let me put this over 2 lines. Okay, and that's telling it to expire 6 months from now. What does it like here? You're right, it's name cookie that expires. Thank you. All right, so we're telling it to expire, and now we have to actually add it. If you remember, we've got 2 cookies. We've got a first name and an email cookie. So in this one here, I'm going to change all this to email. That is everything for the confirm page. There's more that has to be done on the request page. We'll do that in just a minute.
You forgot to add the quotations for the email. It says first, next.
Right, you're right. That should be email. Thank you. It's part of the problem when you do too much copy and paste, I guess. Like I said, I'm a believer, especially with where all of us are here, you know, in our careers, that it doesn't hurt at all to put a little bit of documentation in there. Not a bad time to save. Now, I'm not going to run it yet because I'm going to have problems because I'm doing an ask backwards. I shouldn't do the confirm and then the request. I should do the request and then the confirm. But since I screwed it up, we're doing it ask backwards. All right. Does everybody have this? All right. So then we bring up our request page. Our request ASPX.cs page. All right. Now, hopefully we already have those two variables there. Do we? I do. If you don't, put them in. Display it if there is any, otherwise do the default values. That isn't new. Okay? Everybody has this, correct? But in here, where we're setting the defaults, we have to also fill in the cookie values, correct? You look up on the screen at what's in blue, that's setting our defaults. So that's setting our default arrival date, and that's setting our default to make sure that the king is the one that's checked. Well, so I'm going to put in here, I don't know, perform cookie check. And I will tell you, because I've even listened to people argue about stuff like this, don't put blank spaces in there. I would just recommend running stuff together. I would also recommend not using numbers. Just run your cookie names together like that. Use camel casing with also making the first one uppercase. It just is going to be much cleaner for you if you do it that way. Since it's in double quotes, technically you could do this, but you shouldn't do that, is what I'm telling you. All right, so if request cookies is not equal to null, change it to perform name cookie check. All right, so if that's not equal to null, now, just so you're aware of this, I'm going to put the other one in here too. I could go and check again, but if my first cookie is set, the second one should be set. Would you agree with that? Because of the way the code is written previously? I could make another if statement here. I could say if request cookies email not equal to null, and then do the same thing with the email. But I'm taking for granted that if the first one has got a value in it, so does the second one. Maybe that's not the best way to code, all right? But imagine if I had 30 cookies. All right, would I really want to put 30 if statements in there? Probably not. I think I lost a curly brace there. Again, I'm asking the question, do people understand what we're doing here? What we're doing is we're about to fill in all of our default values. And what we're saying is if those two cookie values are set, they now become default values. All right, so that's what we're checking for. Again, does that make sense? Pardon? All right, I'm going to go check. I believe that our display reservation doesn't change. Add type. Set all that stuff. Yeah, that looks good. Our clear, we've already got that. That doesn't change. Except, what are we told to do when we click the clear button? Anybody remember? Clear the cookies. Technically, remove the cookies, but you're right. All right, so when we get done with all this stuff, we're going to see to put a comment in here that says remove cookies. We do the same thing for both. So I can say here, how about remove name cookie? And then later I'll just do the same thing and put remove email cookie. And it almost looks like, you're looking at this and you're like, this just seems so stupid. It's like you're creating the cookie again. Yeah, and I can't give you a great reason why it's done this way. I can just tell you that it's done this way. So now I'm going to save this and try it out the way they just said it. All right, so. Okay, as I run this, will those values be filled in for my name and for the email? Yes or no before it comes up? Yes or no? No, why?
Because you haven't created any cookies yet.
Because the code's there, but the code hasn't executed yet. So, I'm just going to run through it again. Okay, here's a question. Okay, if I put this in and I click, okay, what is that feature called? Anybody remember? This is the same feature we had in regular HTML. It's called Autocomplete. So if I click this, notice how it filled in everything for me? You can turn that off. It literally is just an attribute that if you set it to false, it won't fill that in for you. You may find, that you want to turn that off. You might or you might not. All right. Submit. There's everything. I confirmed. Thank you for the request. We'll get back to you. All right. Now we stop the run. We run it again. Now we should have cookies set, unless I did something wrong. And there's my name, my first name, and there's the email address. Okay. There's a lot of ways. I kind of, the way what the author did here was a little bit cool in the way he used them, because typically the way you see cookies is for, like I said, for kind of dumber stuff like "Welcome back, Jeff," you know, that type of thing. And again, it very well, I think he probably didn't do this just because it would have been a lot more code, but you very well may, with 10 fields in there, you may want to take 8 of those fields and make them cookies. Does that make sense to everyone? If you've got somebody who's a frequent flyer, so to speak, or some kind of a salesperson who's always making reservations, if I can set this up so that everything is filled in for them except their arrival date and their departure date, it's just that much easier for them. All right? They can still go back and make changes if they want to. If they decide they're bringing their spouse, all right, or if they want, you know, maybe they've always get a queen bed and they want a king, I don't know, or maybe they have a special need request. They can always do that. So yeah, I'll come around on Friday, and ideally on Friday, I can get I think I've got everybody's stuff through like chapter 4. So if I can get your 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9, if we get that far, you know, just copy it. We'll do that. I want to be able to give you as much credit as I can, especially those of you who might be struggling through tests. All right. I want to give, you know, every assignment like this we do as a class, I want to be able to give you full credit for it. Any questions on either one of these? Going once, twice.